Ace Frehley lowered his guitar. Mid-solo. Without explanation. And 8,000 people fell into complete silence. The arena was packed. Chicago Stadium. March 1978. The air thick with cigarette smoke and amplifier hum and the electric anticipation that always filled the room before a guitar solo. The drums had just dropped out. The bass had pulled back. The stage belonged to Ace Frehley now, just him and his Les Paul and 8,000 people waiting to hear him scream. He'd started the solo the way he always did. Clean. Controlled. Building slowly. His fingers found the notes with practiced precision, each phrase leading naturally into the next. The crowd was locked in, bodies swaying, lighters raised, that collective communion that happens when a guitarist connects with the room. 30 seconds into the solo, Ace stopped playing. Not a mistake. Not a broken string. Not a technical failure. He simply stopped. His hands moved to the strings and damped them. The sustaining note died instantly. Silence rushed into the vacuum where the music had been. He lowered the guitar from his chest, letting the strap take its weight, until the instrument hung at his waist. The crowd didn't know how to react. A few scattered cheers, uncertain. Then those died too when they realized Ace wasn't moving. Wasn't acknowledging them. Wasn't doing anything except standing perfectly still under the spotlight, looking down at the guitar hanging motionless in his hands. The drummer looked at the bassist. The bassist looked at the rhythm guitarist. Nobody knew what was happening. 8,000 people holding their breath. Waiting. Watching Ace Frehley stand alone in the center of a massive stage, completely silent, his guitar lowered like a weapon he'd chosen not to fire. Ace didn't defend himself. He never did. To understand what happened in those frozen seconds, you need to understand what happened 6 hours earlier. Ace Frehley wasn't always Ace Frehley, legendary lead guitarist with the signature sound that defined an era. In March 1978, he was still building that legend, still proving himself night after night, still dealing with the weight of being known as much for his makeup and stage persona as for his actual playing. The Space Ace. The guy with the smoking guitar. The one who shot rockets from his instrument during shows. The showman. It was good for ticket sales. Good for the image. Good for everything except being taken seriously as a musician. That afternoon, during soundcheck at Chicago Stadium, a session guitarist named Richard Kolberg had shown up. Not to perform, he was there as a technical consultant for the venue's new sound system, testing frequencies, checking monitor mixes. He'd worked with everyone. Clapton, Beck, Page. His credentials were impeccable. He stood at the side of the stage watching the band run through their set, making notes on a clipboard, adjusting levels. Professional. Distant. When they took a break, Ace was sitting on the edge of the stage, his Les Paul resting across his lap, adjusting the action on the low E string. Richard walked over, still holding his clipboard. "You're Ace Frehley," Richard said. Not a question. A statement of fact delivered with the kind of neutral tone that can mean anything. Ace looked up. "That's what they tell me. I saw the show in Detroit last month. Impressive production. The rocket launcher, the smoke, really theatrical. Thanks." Ace went back to adjusting his string. "Must be nice," Richard continued, "being able to hide behind all that. The makeup. The effects. The spectacle." Ace's hand stopped moving. He didn't look up. "What do you mean?" "I mean it's smart. Give them a show, they don't notice if the playing is..." Richard paused, choosing his word carefully. Serviceable. The word hung in the air between them. Serviceable. Not bad. Not good. Just adequate. Functional. The kind of word you use for a tool that does its job without being exceptional. Ace still didn't look up. He turned the tuning peg a quarter turn, plucked the string, listened. His face showed nothing. "I've been doing this a long time," Richard said. "Session work. Studio sessions. I've played with the best. The real guitarists. The ones who don't need fireworks and costumes. They just sit down and play, and you know immediately you're hearing something special. Must be nice. Ace echoed back, his voice quiet even. What I'm saying is, and this isn't personal, there's a difference between being an entertainer and being a musician. You're good at the first part. Really good. The kids love it. But the second part. He shrugged. That takes something different. Something you either have or you don't. Ace set his guitar down carefully on the stage. He stood up slowly, his movements deliberate. He looked at Richard directly for the first time. You think I can't play? I think you play what you need to play to support the show. Which is fine. That's the gig. But if you stripped away all the effects, all the production, all the makeup and rockets, if it was just you and a guitar in an empty room, I don't know if there'd be anything there. The other band members were close enough to hear this. Nobody said anything. They watched Ace, waiting to see how he'd respond. Ace picked up his guitar. He walked to his amplifier. He reached down and turned off every effect pedal. Every one. Distortion. Delay. Chorus. Reverb. He unplugged the cable from his effects chain and plugged his guitar straight into the amp. No processing. No coloring. Just the raw signal from the pickups to the speakers. He turned back to Richard. You want to hear me play? Richard smiled slightly. Sure. Ace played one note. Clean. Sustained. Perfect intonation. He let it ring for 5 seconds, then bent it up a half step. The note sang. He brought it back down. He played a simple phrase. Nothing flashy, nothing technical, just a melodic line that moved through the changes with effortless logic. He played for maybe 30 seconds. Then stopped. That's it, Richard said. That's what you got without all the toys. Ace unplugged his guitar. He coiled the cable carefully. I'll show you the rest tonight. During the show. Richard laughed. With all your effects turned back on? No, Ace said quietly. Without them. Subscribe and leave a comment, because some moments only make sense when we remember them together. The other band members looked at each other with concern. The effects were part of the sound. Part of the show. Part of what people expected. Stripping them away was stripping away the armor. Ace, the rhythm guitarist said quietly, you don't have to prove anything to this guy. I'm not proving anything, Ace said. I'm just playing guitar. 6 hours later, Chicago Stadium was full. The show ran its normal course through the first few songs, full production, rockets firing, smoke machines pumping, Ace's guitar screaming through the carefully crafted effects chain that had become his signature sound. Then came the moment. The song where Ace traditionally took his extended solo. The one where the band dropped out and gave him the stage. The drums and bass faded. The spotlight hit Ace. He started to play. For 30 seconds he played normally. The crowd was into it, responding to every phrase. This was what they'd paid for, the space Ace doing what he did best. Then Ace stopped. He reached down with his right hand while his left kept the guitar steady. He clicked off every pedal. One by one. Distortion. Delay. Reverb. The crowd couldn't see what he was doing, but they could hear the sound changing, stripping down, becoming rawer with each click. He unplugged the cable from his pedal board. Plugged straight into the amp. And that's when he lowered the guitar. Stood perfectly still. Let the silence expand. The crowd didn't understand. The band didn't understand. But from the side of the stage, Richard Kolberg understood perfectly. He was standing there, clipboard forgotten, watching Ace Frehley create the moment he'd been challenged to create. Away from the spotlight, Ace made a choice no one expected. Ace raised the guitar back to playing position. No effects. No processing. Just wood and wire and amplification. He played. Clean tone. No distortion to hide behind. No delay to thicken the sound. No reverb to fill the space. Every note naked and exposed. Every tiny imperfection audible. Every bit of technique, or lack of it, completely revealed. He played a phrase that started simple and built with mathematical precision. Each note placed exactly where it needed to be. Not fast for the sake of speed. Not flashy for the sake of show. Just pure musical logic, each phrase answering the one before it, creating a conversation that needed no words. The arena was dead silent except for the guitar. 8,000 people had stopped moving. Stopped cheering. Just listening. Ace's hands moved across the fretboard with the kind of ease that only comes from 10,000 hours of practice nobody sees. The solos most people knew, the ones with all the effects, were impressive. But this was something different. This was the foundation those solos were built on. The skeleton beneath the costume. He played for 2 minutes. No tricks. No gimmicks. No rockets launching from the headstock. Just a man and a guitar having a conversation with 8,000 witnesses. When he finished the final phrase, a simple resolution that felt inevitable in retrospect, he let the note ring into natural decay. No sustained pedal extending it. No reverb coloring it. Just the pure sound of a Les Paul through a Marshall stack, fading into silence. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Then the arena exploded. What followed silenced everyone in the room. The crowd wasn't just cheering. They were standing. Screaming. The kind of response that isn't about spectacle or showmanship. It's about recognition. About witnessing something real. Ace didn't smile. Didn't raise his arms in victory. Didn't acknowledge the response at all. He simply bent down, plugged his effects back in, clicked them on one by one, and continued the song as if nothing had happened. But everything had happened. From the side of the stage, Richard Kolberg stood with his clipboard hanging forgotten in his hand. One of the road crew standing nearby watched him watching Ace. "You okay, man?" the road crew asked. Richard didn't answer for a long moment. Then, quietly, "I was wrong." "What?" "I told him this afternoon he couldn't really play. That he hid behind the effects and the show." "I was wrong." The road crew member smiled. "Yeah. You were. He didn't have to do that," Richard said. "He didn't have to prove anything. Especially not to some session guy he'll never see again. That's not why he did it." "Then why?" The road crew member shrugged. "Because someone questioned whether he could. And Ace don't talk. He just shows you." After the concert, Ace was in the dressing room, packing his guitar into its case with the same careful precision he always used. The other band members were celebrating, drinking, replaying moments from the show. Richard appeared in the doorway. He stood there until Ace noticed him. "That was..." Richard started, then stopped. "I owe you an apology." Ace latched the guitar case closed. "For what?" "For what I said this afternoon. I was out of line. You asked if I could play without the effects," Ace said, his voice even. "So I played without the effects. But you didn't have to. You could have just told me to go to hell." Ace picked up his case. "What would that prove?" "That you didn't care what I thought." "I don't," Ace said simply. "But I care what I know. And I know I can play. With effects or without them. The effects aren't there because I need to hide. They're there because they're part of the color. Part of the painting. But the painting exists without them too." He walked toward the door, then stopped beside Richard. "The real musicians you talked about, the ones who don't need fireworks, they're great. I respect them. But I like the fireworks. And I can do both." Richard nodded slowly. "Yeah. You can." Ace left the dressing room without another word. He never mentioned the conversation again. Never told the story in interviews. Never used it to prove a point. But Richard told it. For the rest of his career, in studios and sessions and late-night musician conversations, he told the story of the night Ace Frehley turned off every effect and played completely clean in front of 8,000 people. Not because he needed to prove anything, but because someone suggested he couldn't. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. 10 years later, a young guitarist asked Ace about that night. "Is it true you played a whole solo with no effects?" Ace shrugged. "Yeah. Why? Because I could." That guitar, the one he played that night, stayed in his collection. He never added it to the touring rotation again. It sits in its case, unmodified, exactly as it was. A reminder that real power doesn't need amplification.